So we're going to talk about proliferative and non-proliferative breast diseases. This is a very important slide and it's really going to help you memorize all this. So actually we have divided this into three categories. Actually this is for the benign diseases, not for the malignant one, right? So initially we'll be talking about the benign diseases and then we will talk about the malignant diseases, right? So one is a non-proliferative category, other is a proliferative, and then you have the proliferative with atapia. You can see there's increased no risk and relative risk is 1.5 to 2%, and proliferative with atapia has a relative risk for 4.5 to 5%. What does that mean? That means that the risk for malignancy, right? Some benign lesions, which are non-proliferative, they actually don't have any risk for being converted into malignancy, right? That includes cysts, which are micro or macro, simple ectasia, it can be simple fibroadenoma, mastitis, fibrosis, metaplasia, which can be squamous or apocrine metaplasia, and then you have the mild hyperplasia, right? I have already discussed almost all these things in section 2, like what was the cyst? They were micro, they were macro, they were solitary, they were basically maybe cystic or solid. I've already talked about that. Simple ectasias, fibroadenomas, mastitis. These are all non-proliferative benign diseases, right? And in these non-proliferative benign diseases, there is no risk for malignancy. But there is another category, proliferative without atapia, right? What is atapia? That means the change and shape in cells, right? Like the normal cells, they have specific shape and size and regularity. But when they undergo a process of metaplasia or they undergo a process of malignancy, there are some changes. Like there is increase in nuclear to cytoplasmic ratio, and there is the increased mitotic activity as well. So that's basically atapia. So in lesions which are proliferative, but they don't have atypical changes, right? They have a relative risk for 1.5 to 2%, and that includes complex fibroadenoma, papilloma, sclerosing adenosis, and hyperplasia, which may be moderate or severe, right? And there's another category which includes proliferative with atapia, right? So what does that mean? Like they have changes, they have increased cytoplasmic nuclear to cytoplasmic ratio, they have increased mitotic activities, they're not that well circumscribed, and they have atypical changes, right? So this is proliferative with atapia, and you can see that there's increased relative risk for proliferative with atapia, that is 4.5 to almost 5%, right? And it includes atypical ductal hyperplasia and atypical lobular hyperplasia. So this is very important to know that non-proliferative, they don't have increased risk for malignancy. Proliferative with atapia and without atapia. Those without atapia has a relative risk of 1.5 to 2%, and that includes papilloma, sclerosing adenosis, hyperplasia, complex fibroadenoma. And those with a proliferative with atapia, they have a more relative risk for the cancer, like maybe 4.5 to 5%. These are the statistics, and they include atypical ductal hyperplasia and atypical lobular hyperplasia, right? So this was all about the benign diseases. Now we're going towards the malignant diseases, which is a lobular carcinoma in situ, ductal carcinoma in situ, and invasive cancers, which includes invasive lobular carcinoma and invasive ductal carcinoma. So what is actually a lobular carcinoma in situ? In situ means that it is actually it is arising from lobules in terminal ducts, and it stays there. It stays there. It doesn't cross, or it doesn't invade, or it doesn't penetrate that layer, and it is not extending into the surrounding tissue. That is a carcinoma in situ. So lobular carcinoma in situ is a non-invasive lesion that indicates that it is just confined to its own tissue. It's not a metastatic. It's not invading the adjacent structure. structures, or it is not invading the boundaries, right? So the lobular carcinoma in situ is a non-invasive lesion that arises from the lobules in the terminal ducts of the breast, right? There is a solid proliferation of the small cells. They're small, they're uniform, they have round to oval nuclei, and they have variably distinct cell borders, right? So this is basically the lobule, right? I told you when I was telling you about the anatomy and ducts and lobules and everything, right? So actually, this is the lobule, and this is the magnified image that the normal lobule is not so much crowded. There's a uniformity of the cells. There is specific distance, which is in between the lobules, right? But if you have a look upon at this lobular carcinoma in situ, what happens is there's abnormal proliferation of the cells, right? There's they have increased nuclear to cytoplasmic ratio. They have round to oval nuclei. They're small, they're proliferations, and they're small cells. They have solid proliferations, and they have very distinct cell borders, right? So this was all about the lobular carcinoma in situ. You can also appreciate here in this picture that was all about the normal lobule, and you can also see the lobular carcinoma in situ. There is the solid proliferation of these cells, right? So they have basically their cytoplasm is clear to lightly eosinophilic. They occasionally have intraplasmic vacuoles, and they have signal cells forms as well. They have very low proliferative index. What does that mean? That means that they are proliferative, but they have very low proliferative index, like their mitotic activity is not maybe as vigorous as an invasive cancers, right? And they have estrogen receptor positive 95. What does that mean? Estrogen receptor positive, that means that they have estrogen receptors, and sometimes they can this estrogen receptor, this thing is very much important in actually treating the carcinomas in situ. Lobular carcinoma in situ is estrogen receptor positive. What does that mean? That means that it has a receptor for the estrogen, and when you have when you're giving a patient some estrogen modalities, what it's going to what effect it will have on the carcinoma, that it will actually help combating the situation, right? So estrogen receptor positive, that means that you can treat them with the estrogen receptors modulators, and you can actually treat this carcinoma with a pharmacological therapy, right? So they're more prevalent in premenopausal women and white women. Here you can see they are very there's a proliferative, but their proliferative index is very low, not that much. And you can also appreciate there are a lot of proliferative cells. They have increased cytoplasmic nuclear to cytoplasmic ratio, and there's just a lot of proliferation of solid cells, right? So then we have the ductal carcinoma in situ. The name suggests that it is actually not arising from the lobules, it's actually arising from the ducts, right? And it is proliferation of the malignant epithelial cells within the mammary ductal system with no evidence of invasion to the surrounding stroma on routine light microscopic examination. I already told you that in situ means that there is no invasion into the surrounding tissue. There's no invasion, and the extent is just within the boundaries of the structure from which they're arising. So lobular carcinoma in situ is actually arising from the lobules. Ductal carcinoma in situ is actually arising from the ductal system, right? Okay, and they're non-invasive. They're not invasive, right? We are further categorized by size and nuclear grade. Then you have nuclear grade, presence and extent of the comedo-necrosis, and architectural pattern. We're going to talk about common histological subtypes, and the common histological subtypes are comedo or cribriform, or micropapillary, papillary, and solid. And they are basically actually the carcinoma in situ, the in TNM staging, they occupy the stage 0 because they don't have penetration into the lymph nodes. They don't have invasion to the surrounding tissues as well. So that's why they're just confined to their local area. They're inside lesions, so that's why they occupy the stage 0 in TNM staging. So you can also appreciate this is the ductal carcinoma in situ, and you can see the dilated ductal system, and you can appreciate that there's an increased nuclear to cytoplasmic ratio, and there's a lot of proliferation of these smaller cells. So this was about ductal and lobular carcinoma in situ. Now we're going to talk about the invasive breast cancers. So invasive lobular carcinoma and invasive ductal carcinoma. Invasive lobular carcinoma is that which infiltrates into the breast lobules, and it infiltrates into initially it rises from the breast lobules, but it actually infiltrates into the surrounding tissue. So initially we talk about the non-invasive cancers, and now we're talking about the invasive cancer. So the ductal carcinoma is the one which is arising from the breast ducts, and it actually invades into the surrounding tissue. So they're called as invasive cancers, right? So what is important in epidemiology of invasive breast cancer, right? One thing you need to know is they are the most common cancer in the women, right? Worldwide. So breast cancer has a lifetime risk of 1 in 8 women. So you can see the epidemiology of this, like they're very, very much common in the women. And what is the lifetime risk? That is 1:8. Like every 1 woman out of 8, they're going to suffer this invasive breast cancer, right? What are the risk factors for invasive cancers? This is early menarche, late menopause, nulliparity, right? Nulliparity, proliferative breast diseases, obesity, alcohol, age which is greater than 35, like for the first childbirth, right? Hormone replacement therapy, radiation exposure, and family history for the lobular carcinoma in situ or ductal carcinoma in situ, or maybe invasive breast cancers, right? So there you can see this invasion, right? So this was actually the duct, and the cancer cells are invading the surrounding tissue. They're coming out of this demarcation of the ductal system, and it's actually invading into the surrounding tissues. So it was all about the risk factors, which is early menarche, late menopause, nulliparity, use of oral contraceptives, hormone replacement therapy, family history of lobular carcinoma in situ or invasive cancer, obesity, and proliferative breast disease, right? So this is TNM staging I was talking about. T is basically the primary tumor, and is basically the regional lymph node status, and M is basically the distant metastasis, right? Stage 0 is carcinoma in situ, like we talk about lobular carcinoma in situ, ductal carcinoma in situ. There is no evidence of cancer in nearby nodes, and there's no distant metastasis, right? So this is stage 0. What happens in stage 1 if the primary tumor is less than or equal to 2 centimeters? So this is in the stage 1, and there's no evidence of cancer in nearby nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. This is stage 1, right? In stage 0, the carcinoma was in situ, but in stage 1, the carcinoma is greater than 2 centimeters. There's no evidence of cancer in the nearby tissues or nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. In stage 2A, there is no evidence of primary tumor, and the tumor is less than equal to 2 centimeters or greater than 2 centimeters, but less than or equal to 5 centimeters, right? And it's actually what happens in stage 2 is metastasis to 1 to 3 nodes, metastasis to 1 to 3 nodes, right? Or there is no evidence of cancer in the nearby nodes, right? Right. So actually you have to read it like this, that in stage 2A, there is no evidence of primary tumor. There's metastasis to 1 to 3 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. Or the tumor is less than or equal to 2 centimeters, and metastasis to 1 to 3 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis, right? Or the tumor is greater than 2 centimeters, but less than or equal to 5 centimeters. There's no evidence of cancer in the nearby nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. In stage 2B, the tumor is greater than 2 centimeters, but less than or equal to 5 centimeters, metastasis of 1 to 3 nodes, and there is no distant metastasis. Or the tumor is greater than 5 centimeters, no evidence of cancer in nearby nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. In stage 3A, There's no evidence of primary tumor or metastasis to 4 to 10 nodes with no distant metastasis, or the tumor is less than or equal to 2 centimeters, metastasis to 4 to 10 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. Or the tumor is greater than 2 centimeters, but it is less than or equal to 5 centimeters in metastasis to 4 to 10 nodes with no distant metastasis. The tumor size may be greater than 5 centimeter, metastasis to 1 to 3 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. Tumor is greater than 5 centimeters, metastasis to 4 to 10 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. So this was stage 3A, and stage 3B is tumor of any size with direct extension to chest wall or skin and no evidence of cancer in nearby nodes, or there's no distant metastasis. Tumor of any size with direct extension to the chest wall or skin, there's metastasis to 1 to 3 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis, right? And then tumor of any size with direct extension to chest wall or skin, and then metastasis to 4 to 10 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis, obviously. And in stage 3C, there's any tumor designation, there's metastasis to greater than 10 nodes, and there's no distant metastasis. And in stage 4's, any tumor designation, any lymph node designation, or there is distant metastasis. So this was all about the TNM stages. Now, why this TNM staging is important? Actually, this TNM stage is going to decide the prognosis of the cancer, and this TNM staging is actually going to help you in making the surgical or pharmacological therapy choice for your patient, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about treatment modalities, and I already told you that the treatment modalities, they are basically depending on the stage of the cancer, right? In stage 1 and 2, we perform the mastectomy, and this is radical mastectomy, modified radical mastectomy, or total mastectomy, right? And there's another surgery which is called as breast conservation surgery. This is specifically for those patients who doesn't want to go under mastectomy. In mastectomy, and actually the whole of the breast tissue is removed, and in radical mastectomy we also remove the axillary tail dissection, and in modified radical mastectomy some of the parts of the lymph node status, lymph node region 1 or 2 or 3, they are removed, right? So in those women who are very young and they're in the reproductive age and they do not want to undergo a total mastectomy, we perform breast conservation surgery in those patients, or those maybe aged women, or maybe they're not in their infertility, or they're not in fertility age, or they're not in a reproductive age, but still for the cosmetic reasons they do not want to undergo the mastectomy. We perform the breast conservation surgeries, right? And in stage 3 and 3A and B, these are basically more invasives, right? And with the distant metastasis, so we perform modified radical mastectomy plus neoadjuvant, which includes, maybe it depends upon the cancer. Either it's HER2 receptor positive, or it's estrogen receptor positive, or so that's why we combine them with a chemotherapeutic agents, maybe estrogen receptor modulators, ESRMs, or maybe HER2 receptor modulators, right? So in stage 3 and 3A and B, we perform modified radical mastectomy plus neoadjuvant chemotherapy, or breast conservation therapy plus neoadjuvant therapy. So this was all about the treatment modalities. So in this section, we have talked about the benign breast diseases, the malignant breast diseases, their proliferative, non-proliferative categories, and we'll also talk about lobular carcinoma in situ, ductal carcinoma in situ, and we'll talk about the invasive cancers with their treatment modalities. I hope this lecture is going to help you in understanding this topic, which is very, very vast, but which is very, very important. So that's all for today. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching sqadia.com.